Hey church, I don't know about you, but I've got a really close-knit family. I think everyone knows Jason, my older brother. He's one of the pastors here at Life Point. My parents, Carl and Mary. One of my younger brothers, Rick, goes to Life Point as well. And I have another younger brother named Stu also. And I think part of the reason why we've always had such a close family is that we've been very intentional about protecting what you could call maybe family time. And so these are simply gatherings where we get together, it's just us, exclusively our family, and it's just sharing a meal or celebrating a birthday, going away on a camping trip together, doing some other holiday. And it's great. It's just us, and that's the way that it's supposed to be. And even now that our family's growing and getting bigger, all four of us are married now, the next generation's coming through, there's 7 of those, an 8th on the way, but we've all still been very intentional in protecting that family time, still setting aside time where we can get together, just us, and enjoy each other's company. And I love it. To be honest, my family, God giving me my family, is one of the biggest blessings that I have, without a doubt. And I'm grateful for that. And I know that that's not everyone's experience, but I also know that there's many people out there who can relate to my situation. And if you can, I'm sure with me, you'll be a little bit challenged and confronted by Jesus' words. In Matthew 12, 46 to 50, I'll just read out the passage. It says, while Jesus was talking to the crowd, his mother and brothers stood outside, wanting to speak to him. Someone told him, your mother and brothers are standing outside, wanting to speak to you. He replied to him, who is my mother, and who are my brothers? Pointing to his disciples, he said, here are my mother and my brothers. For whoever does the will of my Father in heaven is my brother and sister and mother. And so you can see how these verses kind of hit you in the face a little bit. What Jesus is essentially saying here is that his spiritual family is more important than his biological family. And yet not only is this true in reality, because Jesus says it's true, and not to mention the fact that the entire New Testament is full of Christians, believers, speaking to each other, calling each other brother and sister and father and mother and children. But this concept also makes sense logically. Because if you think about it, our earthly families are actually temporal. They don't continue on after this life. With death, those ties are broken. But our spiritual family is eternal. And so obviously anything that is eternal far outweighs something that is transient or temporal. And so perhaps this is hard for us to get our heads around, but the reality is that in the life to come, we are not going to be kind of like small little families gathered together in one big family. We're simply going to be one giant unified family. The reality of the situation is that our ultimate family is not in fact our biological family, but it's our spiritual family. God has actually, in large part, given us our biological families to point us toward our ultimate family, which is our spiritual family. And I think we can often kind of get that in reverse, be a bit backwards with it. We tend to think, and I know I certainly have, that our spiritual family, maybe our church family, is kind of a lesser, less important version of our real family, which is our biological family. But that's not the case. And on a side note, it's actually exactly the same with marriage. I don't know if you were aware, but Jesus says in Matthew 22 verse 30 that there is going to be no marriage in heaven. No one will be married. And so that tells us that marriage also is a temporal thing. It's an earthly thing. And I know that can be hard for us to swallow, thinking that, wow, my wife or your spouse is actually not going to be your spouse in heaven. That's a little bit of a concerning thought maybe. But again, these are Jesus' words. The principle here is the same, that God has given us earthly marriage in large part to be a symbol of and a pointer to the ultimate marriage, and that is between Christ and the church. That is the marriage between Christ and us. And so in light of all this, I can truly say, for example, that Dan Sweetman, Pastor Dan, is more fully my brother than what my 3 biological brothers are. Except for the fact that, thank God, they're also Christians as well, and so they're not just my biological brothers, but they're my spiritual brothers as well. But it's that spiritual connection that unites us at a deeper level than just simply the genetic makeup that we share. And so what do we do with all this? What's the take-home message here? Is it that my family is wrong to be getting together all the time and be very exclusive in the time that we have together? Should we cancel our holiday next week that we're going on a camping trip, just us? Is that what we're supposed to do? Obviously not. That's not the answer. The application, I think, is not so much it's not a devaluing of our biological family, our earthly family, but it's rather a greater appreciation and a deeper love for our spiritual family. It's looking around at our tiny church, at our wider church community, in fact, at any Christian that we ever meet, and reminding ourselves and thinking to ourselves, wow, this person here is actually my spiritual brother or my spiritual sister. And we are connected eternally in such a deep way. And I think with that realization and that knowledge, that naturally is just going to affect the way that we treat each other. It'll affect the way that we speak to each other, our intentionality with one another, our vulnerability and our availability with one another. It will affect how quick we are to drop everything and go and help one another in times of need, because no longer is it just, old mate from church is going through a bit of a hard time. Maybe I'll send him a message just to see how he's going. It's a perspective shift. It's going, wow, my spiritual brother is in a really tough time at the moment. It's really important that I go and be there for him in this time of need. Ultimately, it's just a call to love each other better, understanding that we're connected eternally, that we're one giant family, and that this is our ultimate family for all of eternity. And all the while remembering Jesus' words as well. When he said to his disciples, he said, "By this, all men will know that you are my disciples. That is, that you love one another."